Hi, welcome to my video on the subtraction of complex numbers. Opposites. Recall. An opposite of each, change all the signs. Negative x plus 3. B. Negative 2x plus 4 opposite is 2x minus 4. X subtract root 2 is negative 7 plus root 2. And the opposite of a negative 4 is 4. Notice you change all the signs. The opposite of a complex number is changing the signs. In A, the opposite of 4 subtract root or 3i is negative 4 plus 3i. The opposite of B is positive 2 minus 6i. And the opposite is positive 8 plus 7i. The opposite of a plus half is a negative a half, and subtract 2 over 3i. The opposite of a negative 8i is positive 8i. So notice the opposite, you're changing all the signs. Practice. State the opposite of each. Pause your video and see if you get the answers right. So the opposite of negative 9 is 9. Positive 2i is negative 2i. Positive 10, negative 10, plus 4i. Change all the signs when you're doing opposite. Negative 6 minus 9i. Positive 5i is a negative 5i. Negative 11 subtract I is a positive 11 plus I. Opposite of a negative 3 is a positive 3. The opposite of a negative 4 over 7 is a positive 4 over 7. Subtract 2 over 11i. You change all the signs, each expression. Now we're going to do some subtraction. When we subtract, we add on the opposite. So that's a plus bi. When you subtract, you add on the opposite of x, which is negative x, and positive y is negative yi. And then you group your like terms together, because you can only add the reals to the reals and imaginaries to the imaginaries. And now let's obey that. Let's simplify each as a plus bi. So when we subtract, we add on the opposites. So 4 plus 6i. Subtract, you make the plus I minus plus 1 and minus 1, and add 2i and negative 2i. We group the real terms and we group the imaginaries. And that gives me 3 plus 4i. When we subtract again, we add on the opposites. So negative 2 plus 4i. Subtract is add on the opposite, which is plus 3 plus 6i. Opposite. Group the reals and group the imaginaries. Notice when you're grouping, you do not change the signs because you're not transposing. 1 plus 10i. Add up the reals and add up the imaginary parts. C, we have to simplify the inside first. Square root of 81 is a 9, minus square root of negative 36. Square root of 36 is 6, an I because it's negative. And the square root of negative 16 is 4, and the square root of a negative 1 is an I. Now we add on the opposite. The opposite of a plus 4 is a minus 4, and the opposite of subtract I is a plus I. Group the reals and group the imaginaries. And that gives me a 5 minus 5i. D, we're subtracting, so we add on the opposites. 7, opposite of 1 is negative 1. The opposite of a plus 6i is a minus 6i. And the reals are together, so that's a 6 minus 6i. Minus 6i don't change because there's no more i's to add on. E, we're going to add on the opposites, so negative 3/4 plus 1/5 I. Opposite of a negative 1/6 is a positive 1/6, and the opposite of a negative 1/2 I is a positive 1/2 I. group the reals together. These are real numbers, and these are imaginaries, so it's 1/5 I, add 1/2 I. When we're adding fractions, we need a common denominator. A common denominator for 4 and 6 is 12. So you multiply this fraction by 3/3. Multiply this one by 2/2. Common denominator for 5 and 2 is 10. So you multiply this fraction by 2/2. And this one by 5/5. Now that gives me a 12 denominator with 4 times 3, -9. 6 times 2 is 12. 1 times 2 is 2. 2 times 5 is 10. 2 times 1 is 2. I. 5 times 2 is 10. 5 times 1 is 5 I. We add real parts. Common denominator is 12. Add -9 and 2 is -7. Add on. Common denominator is 10. 2 plus 5 is 7. And I. And you can't reduce these because 7 is not a factor of 12 or 10. And let's continue. Practice. Simplify each as A plus BI. And practice means pause the video and work each of these out one at a time. Press play to see if you're right. See how well you're going to do. And we're subtracting, so the opposite of +4 is a -4. And the opposite of +3 is a -3. Oh, I forgot to mention. Now, remind me now in a minute that if you have a negative here, you can put a 1 here and a 1 here and multiply by 1, you get the same terms. 1 times 10, 7i. But if you put a 1 here and you multiply by -1, you can see you're getting the opposites. And just do that each time. Do both. 3 subtract 4i. We're subtracting, so the opposite of 9 is -9. The opposite of a minus I is a plus I. And again, if you put a 1 here and a 1 here, multiply, you get 3 minus 4i. -1 times 9, -9, -1 times -I is plus I. So you're going to either add on the opposite or put the -1 there. Your choice. 3 subtract 9 minus 4i plus I. That's a -6 minus 3i. And we're subtracting. So when you subtract, you add on the opposites. So opposite of a -3 is a +3. Opposite of a +5i is a -5i. Or again, put a 1 here and a 1 here. Multiply by 1. Same terms. Multiply by -1 gives you +3, -5. Group your real terms. Oops, that's a 2 minus 2i. So again, when I'm grouping, I don't change the signs. Add -6 and 3 is -3. -2 and -5 is a -7i. And number 4, I have to simplify these first. So square root of 9 is 3. Square root of -4 is 2i. Square root of 4 is 2, and it's an I. Subtract. Square root of -4 is a 2 minus 7i. So PEMDAS, we have to simplify the inside of these first before we do it. Now we add on the opposite because we're subtracting. +2 is a -2, -7 is a +7. Or you can put a 1 there and a 1 there, multiply by 1, multiply by -1. Group your real terms and group your imaginaries together, and you get 1 plus 9i. And number 5, we're subtracting, so we're going to add on the opposite, which is a negative. 5/7 plus 3/4 I. So now we're going to group the real terms together. 2/7 minus 5/7 minus is 3 over 2i plus 3 over 4i. Notice right here, these are already the same denominator, so it's a 7. And 2 subtract 5 is negative 3. And we need a common denominator, which is 4, so we're going to multiply this fraction by 2 over 2. So that gives me a negative 4. 2 times 2 is 4. 2 times 3 is 6i plus, common denominator is 4 already, so we didn't need to change it. So that gives me negative 3 over 7. And we're going to add these together. So common denominator is 4. It has an I. And negative 6 add on 3 is negative 3. So that's the answer, A plus BI. Number 6, we have subtraction and subtraction. Again, I can put a 1 right here and a 1 here. But I have to, the inside is okay, so I get a negative 8. When I subtract, I add on the opposite of a plus 2 minus 3i. I'm subtracting, so I add on the opposite, which is a negative 1 plus 10i. Remember, I can put a 1, 1, multiply by negative 1 gives me positive and negative. Multiply by negative 1 gives me negative and a positive. I'm going to group my real terms together, so I get negative 8 plus 2 minus 1 minus 3i plus 10i. That gives me negative 6 and negative 7 plus 7i as a complex number. So again, when you're subtracting, you add on the opposite, and then you add up your real parts and your imaginary parts. But you can also put the 1 in front of the bracket and multiply by the negative 1. If you like my video, click the like button, click the subscribe button, click the notification bell. Visit my math website, www.mathfullyexplained.com, to find more information about me, my videos, and the content. And that's the content that's on my YouTube channel called Math Fully Explained. Thank you for viewing my video. Bye-bye.